One of the biggest issues that's affecting our party and our endorsement is the mining issue. And there's a divide between the pro-labor union mining people and the environmentalists who are fearful that mining is going to damage our water and ecosystem. And that's causing great problems in our party. And I think people are going to vote on that issue much more than any other single issue on the left-leaning side of the spectrum. So, Leah Phifer, the question to you is, where do you stand on the mining and environmental issue?
Copper nickel mining, I believe, is what we're discussing here today. I just want to reiterate, as I mentioned earlier when we started, that I come from 4 generations of men who worked in the taconite mining industry, in the iron ore industry. And I am very aware that the mining industry has put food on the tables of families throughout the Iron Range and Minnesota for generations, just like it has done for mine. I fully intend to support our taconite mining industry, try to stabilize the industry so that families like mine aren't constantly living under the threat of layoffs and maybe looking into riskier jobs and projects such as what Pete is talking about. The Polymet, Twin Metals projects, copper nickel mining in general, is a type of mining that has never been done in Minnesota before. It is very, very different from iron ore mining. And it is very, very risky in a water-rich environment like we have here. This was one of the driving issues that drove me to declare early in October for this race. I was very troubled and remain very troubled over legislators using their power to push forward these projects through the Polymet Land Swap Bill and through the Miner Act, which I'm strongly opposed to. We cannot and should not be using our legislative power to circumvent due process and push forward these mining projects. I am not sure there is any amount of financial assurances that we can possibly demand a company put forward that could ever make me completely comfortable with these projects. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you, Leah Phifer. Jason Metsa, will you tell us your position on the environment versus mining?
I've always believed in stewardship and sustainability and making sure that, like my grandparents and parents did, we have the next generation getting something in good shape. Virginia, as an example, the city I live in, gets its water from a reclaimed mine pit. And that, to me, is an example of how we should be paying it forward to the next generation. And I'm proud of that. It's also why in my first term I authored a bill to create a 4-year water university research center right up on the Iron Range. It would have been an extension of the University of Minnesota so that we could come up with the next technology so that we could focus on creating the tools that our kids need to do the next generation of mitigation research. It would create good jobs building the building. It would bring some of the best and brightest scientists from around the world to make sure that we are protecting our water. And when it comes to our projects, we need to support our state employees and making sure, our federal employees as well, but we need to support the work they do as public servants, just like I do in St. Paul. And they have recommended that these things can move forward, whether it's a family farm or a project up in my district that's controversial right now. We have to trust that their work is essentially what they have spent their fields and entire careers learning expertise in, and we need to trust their recommendations. If I'm elected to Congress, I'll work to make sure that we bring a water university research center to the Iron Range to come up with the next generation of mitigation technology so that our kids have the opportunity to do things better than us.
Thank you, Jason Metsa. Joe Radinovich, what's your congressional take on the issue of mining on the Iron Range versus the environmental concerns that often come with it?
Right, and I think that we're given a false choice between jobs and the environment too often, and I think that's a wedge designed to drive into our party and to make it more difficult for us to win in places like this. I believe that we should move aggressively away from fossil fuels. In order to do that, we should incentivize clean technologies, we should increase the regulation on carbon emissions, and we should increase those renewable energy standards. Now, paradoxically, what happens is that we move away from fossil fuels, and the clean technologies that we rely on increasingly need precious metals, things like copper, nickel, and cobalt for batteries. Where those materials are necessary, we have to have a clear process in place that's transparent, that holds the companies accountable, that makes sure that we hold a high standard where other resources are at play, and we need to make sure that financial assurances are set aside to ensure that proper closure of the mine can be done after the life of the project and potentially after the life of the company. Those resources should be bankruptcy-proof. We should not approve any project that can't be done safely. But I think that this race is about more than one issue, and it's about more than one region. We have a changing economy in front of us, and that change is creating a lot of anxiety in people across this district, and that's what makes these issues so difficult. And if we, as a Democratic Party, are going to offer solutions for working people, then we need to win in difficult places like this. In 2016, Donald Trump won this district by 15 points. Congressman Nolan, whose position is widely known on mine aid here, won this district by less than 1 point. I know that there's a consensus on this issue among the Democratic caucus goers and attendees, convention attendees, but once we step out into the broader electorate, the opinion is much different. And we have to be able to unify our Democratic base with enough independence to win this race, or we won't be able to advocate for environmental protections or progress for anybody.
Thank you, Joe. Kirsten Kennedy, the issue is jobs and environment. It seems to be dividing our party in some ways. And as a member of Congress, where are you going to stand?
Well, here's where I'm going to stand. First of all, I'd like to say no candidate on the stage has the ability nor the authority to promise mining projects will not move forward. That is disingenuous. Minnesota has a long tradition of mining. I am from the South, so I am not part of the Iron Range nor the mining communities, but I believe we have a responsibility to get the mining right. And what I mean by that is we want to move towards a green economy. We want to use our cell phones, wind turbines. I spoke about North Branch and our solar, and we want to use technologies to move us there. We need minerals. And the minerals that we are looking for are found in Minnesota on the Iron Range. I understand also that people say you cannot be an environmentalist and pro-mining. I think that is not mutually exclusive, and I think that's also disingenuous. I am pro-environment. My brother-in-law is a climate change scientist, and he's here tonight, and he can speak to the issue if you'd like to speak to him afterwards. But it can be done. We have a responsibility for it to be done, because I am unwilling to put it on countries, third world countries, where there are no protections for the workers and no safety measures in place. We can do that. We can do that through the processes going on, and in the state right now, the permitting process, we can look at the language in that permitting process. If companies say they will use the best practices, it has to be in the permit. If it's not in the permit, it's not going to get done. Let's look at the permitting going on right now and add our voices to that and our support for that. Frankly, while this seems to be a divisive issue, I think it's a little bit of a red herring. We need jobs. We want a green economy. We need to get it from a place where right here in Minnesota we can get it and do it right. I am not taking food off of people's tables. It's not happening from this candidate. I think we can talk about the critical metals we need and what they go into. They go into medical technology, and they go into providing catalytic converters and pacemakers and solar projects. Let's do it here so that we don't have to get 40 to 90% of our products from countries that are third world with no protections and no safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten Kennedy. Michelle Lee, do you think there is a division between the environmentalists and the mining, pro-mining people in this party? And regardless, if you're elected to Congress, where are you going to stand on those issues?
Well, I will address the mining issue, which really sucks the air out of every room that these candidates and myself have appeared in. I came out early. I did not attempt to thread the needle. I support iron ore mining. I support taconite mining. I also support unions and collective bargaining. But I am not convinced that we can do copper nickel mining in a rich, water-rich environment. I believe that this issue will end up in the courts. It's going to go all the way up to the Supreme Court. And chances are pretty darn good that it will pass because we have a Republican president who is now stacking or attempting to stack our Supreme Court. If this does become a reality, I will be a thorn in the side of these companies. I will be the bear that has been poked. I will fight to ensure that they live up to everything that they say in their proposals. But let's take a look at those proposals. It's scary. Yes, these are strategic minerals, but I believe we need to keep those in the ground until we absolutely need them. People say, but they're going to do it in other countries where the regulations aren't as strong. Folks, two wrongs do not make a right. I am so afraid that we haven't studied. Our medical community has come out 30,000 strong. Our doctors and nurses say, where are the health impact studies on this plant that could possibly pollute our water sources? How many people in this room have a water well at home? How many people are in the watershed of the Lake Superior watershed? These are questions that we should be included on, and we should voice our concern. This may be resolved by the time any one of us here is elected, but it's up to you to stand up and say, I'm concerned about this. Have we done everything possible? As it's been said in Washington before, there are knowns and there are unknowns. The things they decided 15 years ago, there's new science in place. Are we utilizing that science to make sure that we can move ahead? Because at the end of the day, water is life. Water is our most strategic national resource. And if you don't believe that, go out west, where mining has destroyed 40% of the water in some communities.
Thank you, Shelby. That was the most unequivocal answer I think we've gotten on any issue so far today.